This is New York State. And our Homeland Security is not a political matter. That memory on 9/11, that memory when men and women literally jumped to their death rather than being burned alive, that may have been forgotten in certain corners of this country, but it can never be forgotten in New York State or in New York City. Congressman King, it's a pleasure and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Senator Ball. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here, and at the outset, let me thank you profoundly for holding this hearing. This, to me, you are meeting your obligation as chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, and you'll be absolutely remiss in not carrying out your duty if you do not hold this hearing. The greatest threat facing our nation and our civilization today is the threat of Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is a movement which, as we all know, carried out the devastating attacks of September 11th and is intent on destroying our civilization and our way of life. Now, the purpose of your hearing, as I understand it, is to see what progress we made since September 11th. There's no way we can determine that progress and see where we are unless we know where we stand vis-a-vis the enemy. There's no way we can do that unless we know who the enemy is. And let me just say, from a personal level, I've been really very upset and annoyed by the personal attacks made upon you. I think these are mindless attacks. They come from political special interests. They come from special interests in the media who have an ideological bias. And I admire you for standing up to them. And I know you will continue to, because what you're doing is what has to be done, I believe, to protect our state and our nation. Since 9/11, our country has made extraordinary progress in meeting the threat from Al-Qaeda. Our allies are much more coordinated than they ever were before. Within our own country, the intelligence community is much more coordinated than it ever was before. There's much more intelligence sharing with all levels of government, federal, state, and local. And at the federal level, you have the FBI and the CIA speaking with one another. You have the Department of Homeland Security, which whatever startup faults it may have, is still providing an outstanding service. Here in New York, with the NYPD, what they have done to be in the forefront, under Commissioner Kelly, the forefront of what has to be done, working too with our partners, Nassau County, Suffolk County, state police. So we are as prepared, as almost far more prepared than we were on September 11th as far as an attack from outside the country. But Al-Qaeda has realized that. Several years ago, Al-Qaeda made the conscious decision, knowing that it would be very, very difficult to replicate another 9/11 attack about an attack coming from the outside. So what they're doing now is they're recruiting from within. And they've decided to recruit among people living in this country legally, people below the radar screen, people who have no terrorist involvement. They're recruiting from the Muslim community living in this country. So we've seen examples of that right here in New York. We had Zazi, the subway bomber, went to high school in Queens, raised in New York, had a small business in Lower Manhattan, no terrorist involvement, no arrests, no anything. And yet he was taken to Afghanistan, trained on a number of occasions, come back here as an explosive expert, and was stopped literally hours from when he could have carried out a devastating liquid explosive attack on the New York City subway system. And we found that, we only found Zazi, it wasn't necessarily luck, but it was really almost a needle in a haystack. There were other individuals overseas whose lines were being intercepted and tapped. In the course of one of those conversations, a CIA analyst heard a name mentioned that was new to them, turned out to be Zazi's. And that's how this all happened, because of a telephone intercepted two other people overseas mentioning Zazi's name. That's how close we came to an attack here being successful in New York. I grew up in New York City. My father was a city cop for many years. I lived in Sunnyside. My heart and soul has always been in New York City, and the thought of that type of an attack on the subway system is absolutely devastating. Then we had Shahzad, the Times Square bomber. Here's a person who had actually become an American citizen. His father was very successful in the Pakistani military, traveling back and forth to Pakistan. He was questioned many times, as people do when they visiting certain countries, gave all the right answers under the radar screen. He carried out this attack, which again, only for the grace of God, was not successful. And one of the reasons, by the way, to give credit why that attack was not successful is because the fertilizer he was using was not lethal enough. One of the reasons it was not lethal enough is because of the effort we've had from people like Commissioner Kelly in trying to have more controls on the fertilizers that are sold. But again, he came very, very close to carrying out a deadly attack on a Saturday evening in Times Square. Major Hassan, United States Army, psychiatrist, a major in the United States Army, carried out a brutal attack at Fort Hood, murdered 13 people. And again, I believe it's only because of political correctness that Major Hassan was not stopped earlier. Because anyone who has examined any of the email traffic of any of his communications with Alaki, who was the head of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, would have realized that he was a man intent on carrying out damage against the country. But yet, for political correctness reasons, the military and the FBI, for that matter, also chose to look the other way. So we have to be very, very aware that there is now this threat from within the country. And let me preface all that by saying that the overwhelming majority of Muslims in this country, 99%, whatever the number is, are outstanding Americans, make great contributions to our society. They really, many, especially the first generation, have that immigrant culture, which is really the heart and soul of our nation. So this is not about Muslims, but the fact is the enemy, or those being recruited by Al-Qaeda, live within the Muslim community. And that's the reality we have to face. And you know, there are many ethnic groups here in New York. When we were going after the Westies, the Irish American community was investigated. Going after the Mafia, it was the Italian American community that was being investigated. You look into it. This is not to put a broad brush over a community. You go where the threat is coming from, and that's the reality today. Now, having said that, I don't believe that sufficient number of leaders in the Muslim community face up to this. I think the opposition you get to your hearing is an example of that. Rather than leadership coming forward and endorsing the hearing and say, how can we help, how can we work, immediately the attacks start. And where do the attacks come from? And the media just falls in lockstep when you have groups like CARE, the Council on American-Islamic Relations, which is named as an unindicted co-conspirator in a major terrorist funding case in this country, which the FBI Director Mueller will not even allow his bureau to work with, yet they are cited in the paper time and again as legitimate civil rights organizations, if they were B'nai B'rith or the NAACP or the Ancient Order of Hibernians or Catholic Charities or the Moose or the Elks. The fact is they are unindicted co-conspirators in a major terrorist case, and yet that is virtually never ever mentioned in the media. It is probably greater than between the number 2 city and the number 20 city. I mean, that's what a target we are. Any number of reasons for churches, temples, Wall Street, subways, ports, icons, just the diversity we have here. We are the symbol of America, and therefore the #1 enemy of Al-Qaeda. This is absolutely essential because what most intelligence people believe now is that the next attack against a major city, and we have to assume it's going to be New York, will be launched from the suburbs. That's what happened in London, that's what happened in Madrid. Because in the suburban area, which is spread out, it's much more difficult to have the threat now is as real as it's ever been. Secretary Napolitano said the threat level is higher now than any time since September 11th. Attorney General Eric Holder says he stays awake at night, unable to sleep because of the threat of the growing radicalization in this country of young men who are willing to take up arms against their own governments. These are real threats. These are not concocted. These are not illusory. These are not imaginary. These are very, very real threats. And I would just say that as we approach the 10th anniversary, not for people to look upon September 11th as just some historical moment like Gettysburg or Pearl Harbor or Bunker Hill. It was the first battle in the war which is still being waged. And the war, as I said, the threat level being as high now as it's been since September 11th, and we being in New York, being the #1 terrorist target, this is real. We cannot hide from it. Eric Holder gave a speech back in November where he was defending his sting operations he was operating and using. And he's being attacked by various groups such as CARE. Eric Holder, probably the most liberal attorney general we've ever had, said these sting operations are absolutely essential. Dennis McDonough, the President's Deputy National Security Advisor. And I don't know if Dennis McDonough wants to be put in the same category as Senator Ball as you and I don't know if we want to be with him, even though he's actually a very able guy. But Dennis McDonough called me the week before my hearings and told me that the White House wanted me to go ahead with these hearings because we have to face up to the reality of that Al-Qaeda is recruiting in our country. And then he gave a speech several days later where he made a point of saying that we can no longer live in a world where we don't realize how real the threat is of Al-Qaeda radicalizing the Muslim American community. These are Dennis McDonough's words, not mine, not yours, but the chief advisor to the President of the United States came forward and made a major address on this because he wanted to cut through the political correctness, which I believe is just trying to put us in a straitjacket. So I want to commend you today for having this hearing, for standing up to the, I believe, in many cases, the mindless opposition that's been thrown up against you. After I testify and after I attempt to answer your questions, I'll be going back to Washington to solve the small issue of the government being shut down today. If it does shut down, Senator, I'm going to blame you. I'm going to send Senator Paul maybe come up and testify before his committee, and as a result of that, the government of the United States shut down. But no, seriously, I can't thank you enough for holding this hearing, and thank all the members of the committee who are here today. And let me just acknowledge two senators from my own area I see come in, Senator Zeldin and Senator Jack Martin, and again, thank them for their service and for all the support they've given me on this issue over the years.
I'm leaving after.
And with that, I'll be glad to try to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Well, Chairman Ball, I just want to say thank you for holding this hearing. I don't have a question as much as a statement, and I can speak for myself, but I'm sure I'm also able to speak for many other New Yorkers to say that I firmly believe that New York City and New York is a safer place because you are a congressman and because you are running the Homeland Security Committee. So just as a New Yorker, I just want to say thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much.
And we all, I'll speak for myself. I mimic that. Thank you.
This hearing is essential because Al-Qaeda has adjusted its strategy. It is now recruiting people within the...
Hearing such as political correctness.
Yeah, political correctness, that did stop us. I believe stopped the government from taking action against Major Assad. They had to know. Just finished the hearings. I thought they went very well. Senator Ball's doing a great job. And the media is showing appropriate interest in it. And now I'm heading back to Washington to hopefully stop the government from shutting down. So on the way to LaGuardia. Thanks.